The Mystery of Magic in Ancient Times, revealed by Shel Savage. The fountain, dedicated to Anna Perenna, was discovered along with many curse tablets, cylinders, and other objects used in magical practices by the people of Rome. This sheds new light on how people practice religion and magic in their personal lives. This practice of magic was not legal and could be punishable by death. Therefore, these acts of magic would be performed on the outskirts of town. As you could see from this slide, the location of the fountain was found on Piazza Euclida, that is located on Via Guidobaldo del Monte in Rome. The excavation was led by Marina Perinomonte, who was the director of the archaeological sites of Rome at that time. New knowledge has emerged since the finding of the spring and its contents. The sanctuary was a huge fountain with a cistern around it. In the muddy area in back of the fountain is where the curse tablets, cylinders, and lamps used in magical practices were found. The inscription on the fountain was dedicated to the spring of Anna Perenna and her nymphs, as you can see on this slide. This evidence of cursed texts shows that magic practices were being performed during cult practices and were being done in ancient times all the way to the Republic of Rome. In this image, you can see oil lamps and coins that were also found at the location where the tablets and other cursed items were found. Anna Perenna was the goddess of vegetation, and the tradition was to drink from the spring on March 15th for good luck of the new year. According to Ovid, it is known as Ides of March. Tammy Jo Eckhart states that, quote, "The traditional Roman New Year was celebrated on March 15th, with religious and secular activities on the banks of the Tiber River. Sacrifices, music, food, and wine all honored the goddess Anna Perenna and asked her to grant everyone and Rome a good year. The nymphs represented on the spring invoked chthonic forces of magic rites. The practice of ancient magic and black magic's intention was to harm others that would affect either their livelihood, health, or love. Since magic was forbidden according to the Law of 12 Tables, and also from the Codex of Justinian, if caught, one would face a death sentence. Even though the stakes were high, this was still a widespread practice and was aided with a professional magician or priest. Christianity did not stop the practice of magic. It was practiced in the night when no one was around to see. This also gives us a better understanding of the form and the containers that were used. The language used on the Depictiones were Coptic, Hebrew, Celtic, Latin, Oscan, and Etruscan, which required a semiotic approach in determining the symbolism of the texts. Since there were over 1,500 texts in the location, all written on lead, deciphering the ritual took time to decode. The magical rituals were multifaceted that involved many tasks to activate the curse. There are papyri that have the rituals and curse actions also found in Coptic and Greek. The formulas went something like this: Ruler of the Shadows, or Eternal Sun, or My name is Peace. A few of the Depictiones had symbols on them to allude to magical practices, such as seen on this slide. These symbols were also found on a group of cylinders that were found that also had an image of Abraxas on it with symbols on his belly, as seen in this image. The cylinders that were discovered came in threes. Each cylinder fit inside of each other. Each container had writing on it except for the biggest one. It is believed that the reason was because it was meant to be secret. In the smallest cylinder was a depiction of a human that was placed upside down in the container that had writing on it or symbols, and then sealed. Then the container would be put into another container that had writing on it as well. Lastly, the entire container would be placed into the biggest container that had no writing on it and then was sealed with a wax or a resin. The body was made of either bone or wax and was anatomically correct. The body also had symbols on it. The body was abused deliberately by either cutting off the feet or the genitals or both. assuming this was part of the curse, but we don't really know. This is a close-up image of one of the Roman voodoo dolls, if you will, with the genitals cut off, as you can see here. The symbols on the belly of Abraxas have the acronym Christ of Nazareth, Son of God, Christ of Nazareth, and God, God, God. Also, Abraxas is holding something in his hand that looks like a wand. So according to Filippo Carla and Irene Berniti, Abraxas was able to order nymphs to help aid in the magic rites. Abraxas was thought of the entire universe since, in numerology, his name equals 365, and the 7 letters in his name are to represent the planets. He could have been an important part of the aspect of ancient magic. Could Abraxas be Jesus' father? The letters UM, SAU, which means leads to no other than, and UTEUM, SAU, CIETIS, which means in order you shall hurt him. So this was believed to have meant that the person would have been killed by a bloody force, and it would have been said aloud to invoke God. The figures found inside the containers were made of bone or wood and covered in a beeswax or clay. The name of these figures is Theocrat, meaning the poisoners and Horus. However, one figure that was found was covered in a wax that's only found in Egypt and is a white wax. This is evident since the figures have been well preserved since they were sealed inside the containers all this time since their discovery in 1999. The reason the figures look black is from the lead that changed the color over time. In this side, you can see the cognomen of the individual that was being cursed on his neck. If the figure was a woman, then the god invoked on the Diffictione would be an Egyptian god Seth. SETE is the vocative form of MNU. The handwriting found on some of the Diffictiones were written in a cursive Roman text that was found in the 3rd century CE. The manuscript contained minuscule and majuscule letters, as well as a bunch of ligatures. On this tablet is an example of a curse that involves both the victim and his mother, as seen on this slide, the name of the victim and his mother, and it also states who was born from a cursed vulva. The complexity of this tablet is rare and has recently been decoded with the aid of a Hungarian gynecologist. As you can see, the central diamond shape has a figure of a human with 4 upstanding hairs or rays. The eyes are wide open, and the shape of the figure without limbs is thought by Marina Paramonti to have represented Anna Perenna herself. However, E. Gaddal, a Hungarian gynecologist, found another interpretation by the engraving of a uterus that is found on other magical gems. The figure without limbs represents a photis, meaning birth, and the logins would represent the vulva. Many scholars believe that the letters under the eyes are blobs, that is a Coptic meaning, the great eye of bees, which is an Egyptian religion that is an ugly demon called Bes. The eye is cursed in order to not see anything, so that Surah could not tell you anything either. Now, taking a closer look at this image, we can see on each side of the lozenge there are 2 snake-like figures with big eyes, both of them looking up and turning their mouths at each other. The one on the left has a brush on its back and the letters Q and X in its body. This image of a snake is found on other tablets in Rome and is known as a snake by the scales on its body. This is understood as a magic symbol of demonic powers of the netherworld. The next component of magic on this example is the big holy letters, 5 on the top and 7 on the bottom, that look like letter forms. However, the rings at the end of the strokes can be interpreted not as words but as symbols, reinforcing the magic powers on the Diffictiones. Lastly, the curse text is in Roman cursive with ligatures and letters, E with R or S. The shape of the S has a narrow hook at the upper end of the second line, and an A is mostly shown as an open curve which can be mistaken as a U. The writing style shows that of a confident writer by the certain swing of the A. The block of text on the bottom is the last 7 lines placed under the lozenge and is translated to say, quote, "The sacred and holy nymphs with the infernal gods and the messengers, what I wish and demand from your great virtue, take the eyes and take them completely away. Take the right or the left one of Sura, who lately was born from a cursed vulva. I wish and demand from you your great virtue. It shall happen. Take the eyes, the right and the left one, in order that the virtues of the Sura, the judge, may not persist, who was born from a cursed vulva." Latin diffictione tabulae, the language on the tablets, is a form of social behavior. And this ritual would involve acts of piercing, binding, and submerging in water. The manipulation of the lead llama is thought by scholars to have been aided by a supernatural power to help in the curse. Defixio means ritual, and the tablets were deposited in a place accessible to the supernatural powers, such as grave and Catholic sanctuaries. On this slide is an example of a love curse. As you can see, a man is bound with ropes and has 2 snakes on either side of him. The inscription reads, "He whom I love with all my thoughts." This curse was designed to bind love to the lover to oneself forever. This tablet also had magical symbols along with a biblical telegram in the sequence of 4 Hebrew letters forming the name Yihah. In conclusion, the defixiones were used to harm people that were usually done on the day of celebration, such as the Ides of March. On this day of celebration of the new year was also the day that taxes were due, which makes an interesting fact that many of these curses were placed on thieves. Anna Perenna's Nymphonium was a place where love curses were very popular. So curses of love and forceful bloody death and everything in between. So much can be learned about human behavior through the analysis of these ancient texts. This page is the bibliography. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something new. This concludes my presentation of the defixiones that were found at the fountain dedicated to Anna Perenna.